King Kalen Voss had not slept in 3 days. He stood at the edge of his war table, both hands pressed flat on the map, his silver crown catching the cold light of the torches around him. The map was covered in red marks, burned villages, broken supply lines, and 2 border posts that no longer existed. 14 of his wolves were gone, not wounded, gone. His general, a man named Aldrich, stood across from him with a report in his hand. He had stopped reading it aloud because the king's expression had not changed since the second line. It was the same expression Kalen always wore when he had already made a decision and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. "Send the declaration," Kalen said. Aldrich hesitated. "My king, if we move now without knowing who ordered the Eastern Vale burned our settlements." Kalen's voice was calm. That was the part that frightened people, not when he raised his voice, but when he did not. "They crossed our border. They killed our people. I do not need to know their reasons. I need them to know our answer." The declaration was written and sealed before midnight. By morning, every pack within 100 miles knew that the Northern Crescent was going to war. Across the Thorn Marsh, in a camp made of gray tents and cold discipline, General Serafine Ibarra received the sealed letter just as the sun broke over the eastern ridge. She read it once, then she folded it neatly and set it on the corner of her field desk. Her second-in-command, Commander Wraith, watched her from the tent entrance. He was a broad man with a soldier's stillness, and he had known Seraphine for 6 years. He could read her silences better than most people could read books. "He declared war," she said. "I assumed." "He doesn't know yet." She stood and walked to the tent opening, looking out at her camp. Her soldiers were moving quietly through the morning, checking weapons, feeding horses, doing the small and serious things that armies do when they know a storm is coming. "The poisoning of our water supply came from someone inside Northern Territory. But it didn't come from Kalen Voss. I know the difference between a king's move and a shadow's move." "Then we show him the evidence," Wraith said. "You think the Alpha King will stop his army because an enemy general rides up and says, 'Actually, you've been misled'?" She almost smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. "He'll think it's a trick." "Then what do you do?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I go to the front line myself. I let him see me, and I let the truth do what truth always does, eventually." Wraith did not look comfortable with that plan. But he had learned, over 6 years, not to argue with her when she used that particular tone of voice. The Battle of the Grey Flats began at dawn 3 days later. The basin was wide and low, covered in morning fog that rolled in thick from the marshland on the western side. Neither army could see more than 20 feet ahead. It was the kind of terrain that made experienced soldiers nervous and young soldiers reckless. Kalen rode with his front line. His council had told him not to. He had listened to them patiently, which they had mistaken for agreement, and then he had put on his armor and ridden out anyway. He was not the kind of king who gave orders from towers. His wolves fought better when they could see him fighting beside them. The skirmish started on the eastern flank. A small Eastern Vale unit broke through a gap in the northern line and moved fast, striking and retreating before the fog could be used against them. Kalen spotted the movement and rode hard to cut them off. He pushed through the fog. He found himself alone in a clearing, and then not alone. She was on a dark horse, her dark hair tied back, wearing the gray and silver of the Eastern Vale. She had a sword in her right hand, and the stillness of someone who was never surprised by anything. Her eyes were sharp and dark, and completely focused on him. Kalen felt something he had no name for hit him in the chest. It was not fear. He knew fear, and he had long since made peace with it. This was different. This was the feeling of something clicking into place that he had not known was missing, sudden and total and completely unwelcome. He did not have time to think about it. She moved first. The fight was short and fierce. She was fast and she was skilled. And she did not fight the way most generals fought, carefully, from a protected position. She fought like a soldier who had earned every rank by doing the job herself. Kalen was stronger and more experienced, but the fog and the strange feeling in his chest cost him half a second he could not afford, and in that half second she got past his guard and left a clean cut across his left shoulder. Then her unit called for her, and she pulled back into the fog, and she was gone. Kalen sat on his horse in the empty clearing, For a moment, he would never admit to anyone. Then he pressed his hand to his shoulder and rode back to camp. He did not tell anyone what he had felt in that clearing. He told himself it was the cold air and the bad sleep and the stress of command. He told himself this several times over the next 2 hours, and he almost believed it by the third time. Almost. That night, he called for his intelligence officer and asked for everything they had on General Seraphine Ibarra of the Eastern Vale. The file was thinner than he expected. She had appeared in military records about 10 years ago, no family record before that, no pack of origin listed. She had risen through Eastern Vale ranks faster than anyone in their history. She had led 17 campaigns and had not lost a single one. She was known, the report noted, for 2 unusual things. She never allowed harm to come to civilians in any territory her forces passed through, and she was the only Eastern general who answered her soldiers' questions instead of simply giving them orders. Kalen read the file twice, then he read it a third time, which he would also not admit to anyone. He did not sleep that night either, but for different reasons than before. 2 days later, his intelligence team brought him something unexpected. They had intercepted a courier carrying documents that did not match any Eastern Vale chain of command. The seal on the documents belonged to a trading coalition, a private group that had been quietly disrupting northern commerce routes for years. Kalen had believed them dismantled. He had been wrong. The documents described a plan, a careful, patient plan, false flag operations along the Thornmarsh border, northern settlements burned by operatives dressed in Eastern Vale armor, eastern water supplies quietly poisoned by agents operating from Northern Territory, both sides given just enough reason to point at each other. A war started by people who would profit from both kingdoms spending their strength on each other. Kalen read the documents standing up. He did not sit down. He did not speak. He stood at his desk and read every page very carefully, and then he set them down and was very still for a long time. He had declared war on the wrong enemy. He went to his high elder, Davin, that same evening. He showed him the documents. And then he asked a question he had been avoiding for days. Is there anything else you have not told me? Davin was a careful man. He chose his words with the slowness of someone who knew that once words were spoken, they could not be taken back. He looked at the documents, he looked at the king, and then, because Kalen's expression left no room for comfortable half-truths, he told him about the seer. 2 months before the war declaration, a seer in the northern highlands had sent a letter. The letter said that the Alpha King's fated companion, the one the old traditions called a Luna, was the general who commanded the Eastern Blade. That if the king went to war, he would face her across a battlefield, and the cost of that would fall on both of them and both their kingdoms. Davin had suppressed the letter because he did not believe Kalen would ever accept a fated bond, and because the political cost of a king abandoning a war over a prophecy would have weakened the crown. He had made a decision he believed was practical. Kalen listened to all of this without moving. Then he told Devon he was removed from the council, effective immediately. He walked back to his war room. He sat down. He looked at the map on his table. Red marks everywhere. 2 kingdoms pointed at each other like arrows, and he made a different decision than the one he had made 3 weeks ago, at this same table. He was going to fix this. He rode to the border crossing at Thorngate alone. Seraphine was already there when he arrived, and the look on her face told him she had not expected him to come without guards. He had not expected to feel, again, that same thing in his chest, stronger this time, clearer, like a sound becoming music after starting as noise. He got off his horse. He walked to the border marker. He told her what he had found. She listened to every word. She was very good at listening, the kind of listening that was also analyzing, sorting, building a new picture from new information. When he finished, she asked him 3 specific questions about the coalition documents, the kind of questions that told him she already suspected most of what he had said and was checking the gaps. Then she was quiet. You declared war, she said finally. I did. You signed the declaration yourself. I did. And now you're telling me the entire thing was built on manufactured evidence. Yes. She looked at him for a long moment. The wind moved through the space between them. Why are you telling me this? You could have kept it quiet. Pulled your forces back. Claimed a strategic withdrawal. Because you deserve the truth, he said. And because the people who built this war are still out there, and I cannot dismantle them alone. Something shifted in her expression. Not much. She was very controlled, but something shifted. Then he told her the other thing. The thing he had been carrying for days, like a stone behind his ribs. He told her about the bond. The silence that followed was the most uncomfortable silence of his life, and he had sat through peace negotiations with 3 different kingdoms. She told him she did not feel it. Her voice was steady. He told her, just as steadily, that he thought she did, that he had watched her fight, and she had a habit. One small moment per battle, where she paused before a finishing blow. He had studied enough fighters to know that pause was not tactical. He had been telling himself it was, for days, because it was easier. She told him to leave her camp. He left, but he placed the seer's letter on her field desk before he went. Her name was in it, written in the old language. In the old language, her name meant the one who ends the war. He did not know what she did with the letter that night. He did not find out until much later. What he did know was that 12 days later, a message arrived at Ironhold with her seal on it. 1 sentence. Meet me at Thorngate. Bring your treaty draft. He had already written one. He had started it the same night he sent Davin away. They sat across a plain camp table at the border crossing and built a peace agreement from nothing, argument by argument, line by line. She pushed back on everything that did not protect her people. He held firm on everything that protected his crown's authority. They disagreed loudly on 4 separate points, and reached reasonable language on all 4 by working through them rather than around them. It took 3 hours. When it was done, they sat on opposite sides of the table, with a document between them that neither of them had thought possible 2 weeks ago. He looked at her, she looked at him. You're not what I expected, he said. Neither are you, she said. Your council's files describe you as cold. I am cold. Cold people don't ride alone to enemy camps twice to tell the truth, when a lie would have been easier. He did not have an answer for that. She did not seem to need one. The treaty was signed publicly 1 week later, both armies present, at the same Thornmarsh border where the manufactured war had begun. The coalition was exposed in the weeks that followed, their network taken apart by northern and eastern forces working together for the first time in living memory. And the bond, the thing Kaelin had been carrying like a stone, did not go away. It grew, the way real things grow, quietly, without announcement, taking up space until it could not be ignored. Seraphine felt it fully by the 3rd month. She spent 2 weeks thinking it through, the way she thought everything through, carefully, completely, and without letting anyone rush her. Then she rode to Ironhold. She found Kaelin in his war room, which was, she noticed for the first time, also full of books, stacked on every surface, marked with strips of paper. Nobody had ever written that detail about the Alpha King. She filed it away. She told him she had made a decision, that she was done treating the bond like a problem to be managed, and was going to treat it like what it actually was. He crossed the room. He stopped in front of her. He asked her what she thought it was. She looked at him, the king who had signed a war declaration and then ridden alone to undo it, who had told her the truth when silence would have served him better, who had a room full of books that no one knew about. The only thing, she said quietly, that neither of us planned. He had spent 10 years building walls high enough that nothing could reach him. He had been very good at it. He let this one through,